The topic of today's conversation is called Boundaries. Are they a rejection or an act of kindness? So my background is I grew up in Russia. I grew up in Siberia, and I didn't see boundaries being modeled around me, especially emotional boundaries, and especially in women. So what I remember is that overfunctioning, taking care of everyone else around you, taking on more responsibilities that it is sustainable to take on was not only expected, but it was also praised. So I'm thinking of people around me, and especially women around me, my mother, my grandmother, family, friends, teachers, how much they were carrying work, childcare, cooking for everyone, making sure that everyone's homework is done, summer houses, growing their potatoes and cucumbers. So all of these things were really piling up, and no one really questioned whether or not a particular person can carry that much. So as I was growing up, I saw this modeled around me, and my own expectation was that this is how life looks like. So at that time, for me, it was school, it was learning piano, and I played professionally for 10 years. So not only playing it with the teacher, but also taking regular exams, participating in all sorts of competitions like math, like sociology. So I had quite a lot of this growing up. And this is what I was carrying with me as I started my adult life, as I started my family. So all of these expectations were as a baseline of my way of existing. And I can say that I became a professional overfunctioner. Yeah, and also taking on all of these responsibilities and agreeing on more than you can handle, and helping wherever you can, volunteering wherever you can, was also, in my childhood, was also a way of showing that you love people around you, you care around them, you care about them, and I think it was also a way to earn belonging in your community, in your friend circles. And belonging is one of the basic human needs. So I can totally see why I saw people around me carrying on more than they could, not setting any boundaries, and taking over functioning as a way of life. So in my own life, in my work, and in my family, I didn't really have any boundaries around what is sustainable for me and what is not. So how it looked like. So for example, if, let's say 2 years ago, I started growing my startup. I had 2 young children. One of them was at school, one of them was at preschool, so 2 different schools. I obviously had family commitments too, like house needs to be kept clean, and cooking needs to be done in lunch boxes, and family traveling plans need to be settled. And I consider this a baseline, that this is a way to exist. So when a school or a preschool would offer me an opportunity to take on something in addition, for example, a volunteering role, I wouldn't think twice. I would most likely say yes, and this is what I did. So 2 years ago, having all of these responsibilities already, I easily took on additional volunteering roles, like leading a silent auction at my daughter's preschool, like helping my son's school PTA in running events. So looking back, it was totally unsustainable. I didn't have time. I didn't sleep enough. I was already barely functioning in all of the areas, all of the essential areas of my life. But still, I felt like I need to be helpful. I need to show that I care, and I need to belong in these communities. And how else can I show that I want to belong and I want to be helpful rather than taking on these additional responsibilities? So that's what I did. And eventually, it led me to a place where I couldn't function like that anymore. I ended up feeling really unwell. So my own body said to me that you cannot continue like that. You need to set the priorities. But I must admit that overfunctioning and trying really hard, working really hard, taking more projects that I can, involving myself in more teams, it really took me to some good places. It really helped me advance my professional position, which was important. As someone new to the country, I moved to the US only 6 years ago. I felt a huge need to find ways to contribute, to find ways to involve myself in different projects, to find my professional role there. So once I started my health tech chapter, I would take on every opportunity to do a speaking engagement. I would take on any opportunity to participate or even host professional circle or professional event. And it really helped. It really helped me to belong professionally to all of these circles and all of these places. It helped me to get into the rooms that I couldn't even imagine I could possibly get into, to speak at the big institutions, which also seemed to be out of reach for someone with my background. It helped me establish professional relationships that I didn't know were possible for me. So there are upsides to not having boundaries around your time, around your capacity, and I want to acknowledge that. But it became unsustainable at some point, and I really had to reconsider what can stay and what must go, so I can continue being intentional with my time and contributing meaningfully to the projects that I'm involved in, to my family, which is one of my top priorities with 2 young children. So here is where the need to set really clear boundaries has appeared in my life. And at that time, I was reading and listening a lot to different self-development books and podcasts. And one of my favorite people when it comes to boundaries is Brené Brown. I've been reading her books one after another in the last 6 months or so. And I encountered a phrase by Brené that sounds like clear is kind, unclear is unkind. And I remember looking at this phrase and reading it once and twice, and I read it many times, trying to understand how clarity and kindness can be connected. It didn't make sense to me. So I always considered myself a kind person. Kindness is one of my values. When I agree to take some additional commitments like volunteering at school, it is my way of showing kindness, as I thought. But when it comes to clarity, in these moments when I'm offered to participate and volunteer, it was clear to me that I was already at my capacity. So if I were to be clear regarding this offer, I would need to refuse. I would need to say something like, I really appreciate you thinking of me, but I'm at my capacity right now and I cannot take this additional role. And thinking about this, I couldn't connect it to kindness. Isn't it unkind to refuse to help when technically I can help? I have the abilities. I can write emails and gather spreadsheets, and I have night time where my work is done and my kids are asleep that I can sacrifice to take on this additional role. So it simply didn't make sense to me why being clear can also be kind. As Brené explains it, we cannot really show kindness when we are not clear about what we are capable of and what works and doesn't work for us. So, for example, if I take a volunteering commitment without saying that I don't have a capacity for it, I don't have time for it, and later I let people down, or I still do the thing, make sure that everything is taken care of, but at the same time I become so tired and so angry and resentful, this is not kind. Both of these scenarios are not kindness. So her point, Brené's point, is that to truly be able to show kindness and to be kind, we need to be clear about what works for us and what doesn't. I agree with it these days. And if I have to say no, it's kindness. It's kindness to myself. It's kindness to my family, who will get a mother that is not exhausted and preoccupied. And it's kindness to the other person or organization or a team that I'm saying no to, because I know that I won't do a great job or I won't be happy about this opportunity that I took on. So I want to share an example with you of how setting boundaries has been helpful for me lately. And my example will come from my family. So my old way of functioning and being a good partner and a good mother was to wake up before everyone else in the morning, make everyone breakfast, get the lunch boxes ready, wake the kids up, get them ready for school, make sure they are in the car on time to leave for the school drop-off. However, I would do the same thing on the weekends. So despite waking up from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. and taking care of everyone, I would also wake up around the same time on the weekends because kids are going to wake up in half an hour and they will be hungry. And who else is going to make them breakfast? And I ended up being really exhausted and tired because I didn't really have the opportunities to sleep in, to catch up on this additional few hours of sleep that many of us enjoy having on the weekend. And motherhood is a role that does not give you a break, no matter weekends, no matter holidays. And it really didn't work. So what I did with my family is I told everyone that, guys, I love you, but I also need to get my extra few hours of sleep on the weekend. So on the weekend, you can wake your dad up. You can ask your dad to make you breakfast while mom is catching up on sleep. And it worked. And one of the funny things, I didn't know that my partner can cook. And once I told my family that I'm not going to wake up to make breakfast on the weekends, I learned that my partner is very good at making scrambled eggs and he can pour cereals for the kids and everyone can be happy. So it worked wonderfully because I would wake up not at 7, but at 9, at 10 sometimes, and I would be in a really good mood. No one was bothering me. I could take a shower. I could slowly drink my cup of tea. And the family is already set up for the day and everyone is fed. So the clarity of setting up expectations of what works for me and what doesn't was an essential thing here to make my family's schedule work for me. Another thing that I want to talk about is how setting boundaries can reorganize our relationships and how setting boundaries can reveal the capacity for different relationships in our life. So on one of the podcasts, I've heard Brené Brown saying that boundaries always come hand in hand with grief, even if it's a grief of an expectation. So that's an interesting one, because when I started setting boundaries, I obviously had expectations. I had expectations of how my family would adjust, how my work partnerships would adjust, how my participation in different communities would change. And not all of my expectations were met. And some of the relationships simply revealed their capacity So once I shared the structure that works for me, sometimes I learned that the relationship was based on me overfunctioning and taking on more than was sustainable for me. And this is where the grief part comes in, because some of the relationships had to be ended at this point. It's either me continuing to overfunction and saying yes in situations where it's not sustainable and it doesn't work for me, which is a self-sacrifice, or being clear about what works for me and not trying to solve the other person's or the other party's concerns about it, their emotional load about it. So saying what works for me and leaving the response to the other person to carry. And that was an incredibly difficult thing for me to do. The way I always functioned is I tried to make sure that everyone is comfortable, that everyone likes me and the way I function. This is how I was always earning love and belonging of people around me, of friends, work partnerships, teams. So it was a really, really difficult and scary thing to first figure out for myself what clarity looks like for me and what structure works for me going forward. And then to say it out loud to other people. It was terrifying. As I'm saying this, I still feel how I felt in some of the moments where I had to set the boundaries in real time. It felt so unnatural. It felt like I'm going against all of the rules that I set for myself throughout my entire life. So those were some of the most challenging moments of my life when I had to set expectations and reveal clarity and name my boundaries. And I know that some people might have perceived it as a rejection. Because when your default mode is overfunctioning and not ever questioning whether or not it works for you, just doing what works for everyone else around you, and then suddenly you tell that it doesn't work for you, it can be received as rejection. And that part was really hard for me. So I had to really sit with very uncomfortable feelings and emotions at these times, and allowing the other party to own their part of reacting to my boundaries. So I see a few people online right now. I would love to hear, if you're willing to share, I would love to hear where you could really benefit from setting boundaries in your life right now. Even if you can share one word like work, family, your partner, your parents. I'll read the comments first. I see that for one person, mother is a difficult area regarding boundaries. As I understand, it's related to the relationship with your mother. Is this correct? If this is the case, then I totally get it. I totally get it. And it can be a whole different topic of conversation, how to set boundaries with your mothers and your parents. It's one of the most difficult relationships, right? So we are shaped by these people growing up. We base so many of our beliefs on what our parents has taught us, and especially on what they have modeled to us. And let's be honest, not every parent is able to accept that we are grown up people and we can make our own decisions in our life. For many parents, we are still children, even when we are 30 and 40 and so on. And they have expectations. Okay, so feel free to share more about how boundaries and not setting boundaries is being present in your life, and I will make sure to read and reflect on those. In the meantime, I want to share 3 questions with you. So those are the questions for you that I'm offering you to think about right now or later today, or you may just take a note and come back to them whenever you want. So the first question: where do you feel that setting boundaries is the hardest for you at this time of your life? The second question is: what do you fear will happen if you set those boundaries? So there we are addressing the fear behind what may happen if you set the boundaries. And the last question is: what can change if you become clear about what works for you? What can change in this relationship? What can change in your life if you were to be clear about what works for you? So sit with those questions at some point. And if you have any thoughts that you would be willing to share, you can send them to me wherever it is convenient, here on Instagram, by email. I would love to hear your story. Or just take a note for yourself. It's always really helpful to self-reflect. And that's it for today. I'm really grateful to those of you who joined me for this second week of the Honest Place conversations. I was happy to see some thoughts and contributions in the chat today. Thank you for discussing boundaries with me. I believe that they are kindness and the way of taking care of ourselves and the relationships in our life, even when they are really hard to set in the first place. Thanks so much for joining, and I hope you have a great day, great rest of your week, and I hope you are able to find clarity about what works for you.